Good evening, I'm Faye Kwan. Our top stories for tonight. Thai and Cambodian senior officials begin border talks in Kuala Lumpur, and Donald Trump confirms US envoy to travel to Moscow later this week. That and more on AWANI International. Cambodia and Thailand defense officials begin formal talks in Kuala Lumpur today to ease tensions after their worst border clashes in decades. The General Border Committee meeting was moved to Malaysia at Thailand's request, which says a neutral venue is needed following 5 days of intense fighting along the frontier. A ceasefire brokered on July 29th by Prime Minister and ASEAN Chair Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim brings the violence, which left more than 40 people dead, to a halt. However, over 100,000 people remain in evacuation camps, fearing fresh conflict. Today, both sides described the border as calm and reaffirmed their commitment to the ceasefire, which was reached under pressure from ASEAN and US President Donald Trump. Thai Acting Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai and Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet agreed to extend the talks to 4 days. The final session is set for this Thursday. US President Donald Trump has confirmed that his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, will visit Russia in the coming week. It is expected to take place either Wednesday or Thursday, ahead of an August 8th deadline that Trump has set for Moscow to take steps towards ending the war in Ukraine or face fresh sanctions. Russian President Vladimir Putin has already met with Witkoff several times in Moscow as part of Trump's previous efforts to mend ties with the Kremlin. Trump also revealed that 2 nuclear submarines, which he deployed following a recent online spat with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, are now in the region. However, he did not specify their exact locations. The Republican leader has warned that any new measures could include secondary tariffs targeting countries that continue trade with Russia, such as China and India. Despite mounting pressure from Washington, Russia has continued its military campaign against Ukraine. Last week, Putin reiterated that while he wants peace, his conditions for ending the nearly 3.5-year war remain unchanged. We'll be back with more after the break. Stay tuned.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. Washington has given Russia until August 8th to move towards a ceasefire in Ukraine or face new sanctions. But the Kremlin has claimed it is immune to penalties. Julia Roknefat from Taylor's University weighs in on whether Russia is truly shielded and if the West still holds any leverage.
The West has over-financialized its own economies, something that did not happen to Russia. They have allowed the manufacturing and industrial base to wither away. And unfortunately, well, money it's a piece of paper. It's not a commodity. It's something we all agree upon for the purpose of using in the global trade. But Russia, on the other hand, it has been a major industrial power and one of the major exporters of some of the important commodities, like, of course, goes without saying, oil and gas, but also wheat and fertilizers and uranium, among others. So resources and manufacturing proved value in the course of this conflict and in the course of this standoff between Russia and the West. And we can say that Russia is not exaggerating, that it has the fighting power, and it's I wouldn't say it's immune to Western sanctions, but definitely they are not heating the way that it was meant to heat. And even Donald Trump has admitted that as of lately, saying that I don't know if new sanctions, would they have any effect or the desirable effect. So we could see that the West is rather engaging into a public relations campaign more than anything else with this tariffs and other trade restrictions.
With US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff heading to Moscow this week, Julia suggested Russia is unlikely to change its stance.
Having spoken about also the possible effect of the economic sanctions or tariffs, any economic restrictions, and this disparity in military capacity, and also the problem of having troops on the ground with recruitment of more forces in Ukraine. I think what Steve Witkoff is going to do is trying to negotiate something that would be face-saving, to listen to President Putin again. What would be the condition for him to command to stop the war? Because so far we can see this him being determined, and by him I mean President Putin, to continue fighting on the battlefield because he sees advantage on his side. So what would be the point to give up all the gains?
In other news, tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump last week are likely to stay in place, according to US Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Greer says many rates were set through existing or ongoing deals, and they depend on each country's trade balance with the US. In a pre-taped interview on CBS's Face the Nation, Greer said no changes are expected for tariffs in the coming days. He also called recent trade talks with Beijing very positive, highlighting discussions on rare earth minerals and magnets. On Thursday, Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41% on dozens of countries. The tariffs will take effect on August 7th, slightly delayed from the original Friday deadline. Among the hardest hits so far is Brazil at 50%, Syria at 41%, Laos and Myanmar at 40%, Switzerland at 39%, and Canada at 35%. US President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney are expected to speak in the coming days. Canada is pushing hard to lower the 35% US tariff on its goods after missing the August 1st deadline to reach a deal.
Canada's US Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc said talks with US officials had been encouraging, but a deal that benefited both economies had not been reached. He added that a possible agreement could potentially lower some tariffs and boost investor confidence. Washington had tied the tariffs partly to Canada's failure to curb fentanyl smuggling. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada accounted for just 1% of US fentanyl imports, and it had been working to reduce that number. He remained optimistic on Sunday, saying the talks could still lead to constructive outcome.
Meanwhile, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller accuses India of effectively financing Russia's war in Ukraine by continuing to purchase oil from Moscow during a Fox News interview on Sunday. This comes amid escalating US pressure on New Delhi to halt its trade with Russia.
So what he said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products.
Miller's remarks marked one of the strongest rebukes yet by the Trump administration against a key US partner in the Indo-Pacific. The Indian embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to requests for comment. However, Indian government sources told Reuters on Saturday that New Delhi will continue purchasing Russian oil despite US threats. A 25% tariff on Indian goods went into effect last Friday, citing India's purchase of military equipment and energy from Russia. US President Donald Trump has also threatened 100% tariffs on imports from countries that continue buying Russian oil unless Russian President Vladimir Putin agrees to a major peace deal with Ukraine.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he is ready to hold talks with US President Donald Trump to ensure the quick implementation of agreed cuts to the US automobile tariffs. This comes as Ishiba faces criticism from opposition lawmakers for failing to sign a formal document when finalizing the trade deal with the US last month.
Ishiba defended the move, saying creating a document could have delayed the timing of tariff cuts, as that was their biggest fear. The deal agreed last month lowers US tariffs on a range of Japanese imports, including automobiles. However, uncertainty remains over when US auto tariffs will actually be reduced from 25% to 15%. Japan's top trade negotiator, Ryosei Akazawa, said the timing remains uncertain, noting it took more than a month for a similar deal with Britain.
Over in Russia, a volcano in the Kamchatka Peninsula erupted on Sunday for the first time in 600 years. The eruption was accompanied by a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, prompting a tsunami warning for 3 areas of Kamchatka that was later lifted by the Ministry of Emergency Services.
Authorities said late Sunday that the volcano's activity was decreasing, but moderate explosive activity could still continue. Both incidents may be linked to the major 8.8 magnitude earthquake that struck the region last week. The initial earthquake triggered tsunami waves in Japan and Alaska, prompting warnings for Hawaii, North and Central America, as well as Pacific Islands south toward New Zealand. Russian scientists have warned that strong aftershocks were possible in the region over the coming weeks.
South Korea has begun removing loudspeakers blaring anti-North Korean broadcasts along the border today as part of efforts to ease tensions. Seoul's Defense Ministry describes the move as a practical step to reduce strain, adding that it will not affect military readiness.
The ministry did not detail the removal process or said if the speakers could be reinstalled if tensions flare. The speakers used to broadcast anti-North Korean propaganda and K-pop, irritating Pyongyang, which has cracked down on South Korean cultural influence. The previous government turned them on in June 2024 after North Korea sent trash-filled balloons over the border. Shortly after he took office in June this year, President Lee Jae-myung's administration switched off the broadcasts, seeking to revive stalled dialogue. But North Korea has since rejected the overture, saying it has no interest in talks with the South.
In a world facing growing divisions, young people are stepping forward as powerful voices for unity, compassion and peace. Project specialist at the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, or HCHF, Noor Musa, emphasized that attaining human fraternity must begin with instilling values in the next generation. Farhan Hakimi has the report from Jakarta.
We believe that human fraternity begins with the values that we instill in the next generation. That's why we have a focus on youth. So through our school programs and through the virtual institute that we launched, we hope to bring students together. We hope to create more research programs, more awareness, and hopefully a global hub for human fraternity. And this is the first step. This is the first time we launched something like this, and we are very excited with it.
The conference placed young people at the center of its vision, celebrating their roles as a creator, builders and leaders of a more united world. One of the most impactful elements of the conference was the youth initiative.
Youth are not just the future, they are the heartbeat of human fraternity, reminding us that coexistence is the path forward for humanity. Farhan Hakimi, reporting from Jakarta.
Now that report wraps up AWANI International for tonight. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more and be sure to follow our social media accounts. I'm Faye Kwan, thank you for watching and good night.